Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Monday, February 3rd, 2025, the start of Super Bowl week. I'm George Kurt here along with Cody Roadcap. Cody, how you feeling?
I'm doing great. We have 1 week to get excited to talk about the last game of the year. I was talking bold predictions with coworkers today. I'm jacked up for this game and ready to talk.
You can feel free to throw any bold predictions in here, but make sure we'll tease you. Join us Thursday when we really break down the game. But today we have a little bit of fun with a way too early mock draft coming up, one of our fan favorite segments that we have coming back. Looking ahead to 2025, make sure you follow us at the Couch GMs on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok to get even more than you do from the show. You can always DM us with any questions or comments, but make sure you drop them in the comments when we're live Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 East. I think that's my spiel. Why don't we sit back, relax, and chat? Don't think there's a whole lot of updates to throw in here, but I wanted to mention in the coaching realm, the Saints did schedule another in-person interview with Kellen Moore for post the Super Bowl. Now, if you remember, the Eagles are in New Orleans, and they're actually using the Saints practice facilities for this week while they are down there for the big game. So maybe the Saints keeping an eye on things.
Yeah, I think they maybe put some signs up. Maybe there's already a picture of him and a coaching on the hallway that he can get to walk by every day. Uh, but no, the Saints seem to be locked in on Kellen Moore. I don't know if that's as much to do with Kellen Moore as much as everybody doesn't want the Saints job. And I'm also interested to see if this game how much this game plays into it. Like, win or lose. Like, if the Eagles come up short, does Kellen Moore go, you know what? I really like what we have here. I'm going to wait one more year, similar to what Brian Johnson did after they lost the NFC Championship last year. Or if they win, is that like an instant lock? Like, he might not even fly home with the team.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too. Or I mean, I don't see it being ugly enough where the Saints like start second guessing themselves, but that's another thing you go in there like if the Eagles have a very bad game on offense, the Saints go, "We sure this is the guy?" But I don't think they can be too picky. Like you said, like the job is not exactly the most appealing job. They are the last opening, which is why they get a chance to wait till after the Super Bowl. But the fact that we haven't heard about any other interviews scheduled for the other finalists, but there's one more for Kellen Moore, makes me think it's pretty much locked.
Yeah, I would agree. And I do think it's going to be an interesting fit. He's gotten the head coaching buzz before. Everyone thought he was going back to Dallas. New Orleans gets him. And really, it's going to come down to, which we're going to talk about this offseason, is like, what do the Saints do at the quarterback? Like, do they roll another year with Derek Carr? Do they cut him and just cut everybody and become like an 0-16 or 0-17 potential team because they're in such bad cap shape? Like, it is definitely one to watch in New Orleans. And how long of a leash does Kellen Moore get? I think that'll be something fascinating to watch as well, if he does, in fact, take this job or get this job.
Yeah, and then I mean, obviously, we'll see where the Eagles try to go offensive coordinator search if they lose Kellen Moore because they're going to be behind the ball on that one, being the last team to have to start interviews. But that's something we'll talk about as we get through the game into the offseason. Big news coming out of Cleveland. So Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. The Browns made it clear earlier in the offseason that they will not trade him, but this public outcry, I think, might force their hand to at least consider.
Yeah. So two things I'll say to this. One, kind of circling back, we know you just talked about the Saints salary cap situation. According to Spot Track, negative $51 million.
Ouch.
Second worst, the Cleveland Browns, negative $27 million. And if they were to trade him, that would be over an $18 million dead cap hit. So
That
they're probably going to,
almost clears their problems.
well, that's their dead cap hit. That there's no way to, they could restructure the situation to lower his number, but like they're already in such a cap situation thanks to one Mr. Deshaun Watson. But like that's a fascinating situation. So you can understand why a guy like Myles Garrett can look at from the outside and be like, hey, this team isn't going anywhere. What are we doing at quarterback? We don't know. We paid this guy all this money. Are we going to re-sign Jerry Jeudy? Are we going to re-sign David Njoku? Like, where's this money coming from? I'm about to turn 30. Let me go to a contender. So I
Mhm.
know the Cleveland Browns said they weren't going to trade him, but no one thought Luka Doncic was getting traded from the Mavericks. So, and one day we woke up and he was gone. I think we could be a similar situation. Probably not something to the effect of like, Cleveland sends Myles Garrett to the Steelers for TJ Watt and a first round pick. Like, that's probably not what we're going to talk about, but that seems like that's how the NBA worked, at least for that trade. But that's enough NBA talk for this football podcast. But Myles Garrett, I think he has a lot of space. I know instantly the first team I thought of was the Detroit Lions. They went and got Zadarius Smith from the Cleveland Browns last year. We'll see if they bring him back. But they needed a pass rush last year with all their injuries.
Mhm.
What better player to pair with Aiden Hutchinson coming off an injury than a guy like Myles Garrett? So that was my first one, but I don't want to talk too much about that one and start manifesting that one. Any teams that stick out to you?
Oh, no, the Lions was a great one that I hadn't thought of, but didn't really think too much into. No, I mean, I didn't think too much into where the trade, possibilities were, mostly because I'm still on the fence of like, are they going to trade him? I think a contract negotiation's going to happen, but like I've just seen the mismanagement of how they've handled their team so far. I think we're actually probably in for the long haul here, and we're going to see potentially a holdout going into next training camp before anything gets done. So I don't think this is going to happen over the draft or over the offseason. I think they're going to push this as far down the line as they can, hoping that they can build a bridge with Myles Garrett, but I don't think they're going to get there. But hearing their cap situation, they might have to be more proactive than that.
Yeah, so I would imagine, like I said, I don't know how much the cap truly plays into this situation, because of the cap hit that he is going to leave behind. But I think the first player that would, or the first deadline would be the draft because people want
Mhm.
picks this year if they were to get something. And honestly, I know I made a joke about the trade. I don't think it'd be too much to get a guy like Myles Garrett. Like maybe a first and a third this year and a second next year kind of deal. Like the NBA or the NFL does not like to make big trades unless your name's Herschel Walker or a quarterback for like multiple first round picks or even draft picks itself. But like I think Myles Garrett is attainable,
Mhm.
and I'm with you. I think it's going to be in for the long haul. Like I don't think this is going to be resolved before the Super Bowl the week after. Like put the start of free agency at the first pillar,
Yeah.
just in case, the teams with the money, if they want to give him a contract extension. The draft is the second one. And then it's literally, if you don't do it at the draft, this thing could drag out until, could be another Hassan situation. Hopefully not. Nobody
I don't
wants
know. The
that.
Jets really dropped the ball on that one.
But the last team I'll throw out there for potential Myles Garrett is the Washington Commanders.
Oh.
Third most cap space in the league heading into the season, according to Spot Track. They have some defensive interior pressure, but they could use a guy on the edge. They're the hot team. People want to go play with Jaden Daniels. Like the only problem is they gave up a bunch of middle round picks to go get Marshawn Lattimore, and that didn't seem to work out the best either. So a lot of things to figure out there, but those would be my two teams to watch heading into potential trade destinations for one Myles Garrett.
The two that came to the top of my head, and I'm kind of trying to check to see if it would even work in cap. So I'll just talk and look. The Houston Texans, they are a little bit under in cap, a little over in cap, but they might be able to make something work. I think they're just a team that's young that's going to try to find something to give them a boost. And having him across from Will Anderson, I think would be a good fit. And then
They did just sign Danielle Hunter last year, though, too. So, or
that's
was that a
fair.
1-year deal? I
It
can't
might have been a
remember.
1 year deal. Um,
Anyways, your second team. I'm sorry for
yeah.
cutting you off, throwing you off your.
No. My second team, for whatever reason, the team that came to my head, we're not going to like this one either, was the Bears. Because the Bears, another young team, probably going to look for some veteran leadership. They have a lot of cap space. So we'll see if that is something that could come together.
Yeah, I'm just looking at his Crazy
The Bears
numbers.
probably less attractive for Garrett because they're not necessarily contenders at this point, as opposed to Houston has been in the playoffs a few years. If he's trying to find a team to win a title in the next 2-3 years, I would think Houston would probably be the more attractive option.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and we'll just have to wait and see. And I know that we don't have a lot of news on the dock today, but it is Super Bowl week, so things are going to be, coming out of Radio Row as we get to hype up this game. And maybe one day we'll be at Radio Row. And if you want to see us there, make sure you like and subscribe, or maybe we'll just go on ourselves. Even if you don't want to see us there, we'll have to wait and see.
See, there you go. I like it, Cody. Good plug. I know there was a lot coming out of what Roger Goodell was saying on Radio Row so far today, but nothing really that stood out to me. The biggest thing I was listening for was where they're at with an 18th game. And he said there hasn't been any formal talks yet. So not something that's coming next year, but I'm interested in 2 years if we start seeing that 18th game thing really pop up.
So I believe, if I understand correctly, since the 18th game would require to go back to the table with the players union. I know when they did their last collective bargaining agreement, that was still when they agreed to it. There was a 16th. It was when we were still at 16 games, but they had wording in there to, like, basically, if we went to a 17th game, this is how it would be. And there's nothing like that for if we go to an 18 game. So it would have to be collectively bargained with the players. So that could put some hamper into it, but give them a little bit more money or less practices and they'll be all for it.
Maybe a second bye week too. We'll have to see if that's something that's been thrown around, and that would make things really interesting in the world of fantasy.
No, I think second bye week is for sure. So we're getting ready to do our way too early mock draft, so we're just throwing all kinds of weird things out there. I think we're going to get to the ultimate goal for the NFL, week 18. So there's 18 weeks, 2 bye weeks. Every team plays an international game each year. So instead of having an international league or an international team, there's a game, maybe it's weeks 2 through 16. There's a game internationally each week kind of thing. And that's where the extra bye weeks come in. You get a bye after your international game and you get a bye later in the season or before the season, whatever. I think that's going to be the second option. And that also pushes which everyone has talked about, pushes the season extra week, pushes the Super Bowl back a week. What is next weekend? President's Day weekend. Not everybody, but there's a good portion of the country that has off the following Monday. Make it a Super Bowl Monday, essentially a national holiday. I think that's where we're ultimately going to get to, grow the international audience. We're already seeing all kinds of games. I know it's speculated that the Chargers are going to get to play a game in Sao Paulo, Brazil this year. They're going to be one of the Brazil teams. There's already talks that Brazil might get a second game in Rio de Janeiro this year, as we've already seen the expansion in Europe. So international is the way of the NFL. And I less likely, I think, a full-time team. But if we get to 18 games and a team, we could have 15 weeks of straight international football across the country. Like, I think the NFL would be all for that.
100%. And actually, on top of those international games you're mentioning, it's rumored that the Eagles are going to be playing a game in 2026 in Australia. So add another country, another time zone onto the docket.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, you can relocate your team to Melbourne, Australia in Madden 25. Not a sponsor.
Because that right there tells us exactly what the NFL is going for, is where you can relocate teams to in Madden.
But anything else you want to talk about before we get into this draft?
No, I think I'm ready to get going.
All right. Well, I don't have a bumper. So
oh, okay. So we're gonna
actually hang on.
Here. Okay.
I do.
Oh.
It is a mock draft.
It is a mock draft. Here we are. Let me add my screen. We have a 12 team, way too early mock draft coming here. We're going to be doing 3 rounds if we think it's going well and we have a little bit extra time, or if the chat blows us up, we're going to do round 4. That's why we have our little asterisks here.
I'm trying to push to round 4, so
Cody's been trying to push round 4 the entire day, so
I offer 10.
Plan on going 4.
I offer 10. Let's do 100 players. But George's like, bro, it is March. And I was like, you know what? Sounds good.
Yes, exactly. Cody's out here really having some fun. But we are going to alternate who takes care of what team. So I will be team 1, Cody will be team 2, I'm team 3, he's team 4, etc. So if you need the color code, Cody is the green, I am the blue. So we're looking at round 1, pick one for me. Any other, things I should throw out here before we get started?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this isn't going to be a real league, but assume that we're doing this half point PPR scoring, nothing crazy, no super flex or anything like that. So, maybe a couple quarterbacks will be gone, but not a mad rush. Just your typical half point PPR 12-man league.
I like it. All right. So getting started, we're on half PPR, like you said, 12-man league. I think there's only one choice for this pick, and that's Jamar Chase. So I'm just going to go ahead and go for it.
Oh, I thought there was 2 picks, and that's not the guy I thought you were going to take.
And you thought it was going to be?
I thought you would be the homer and do one Mr. Saquon Barkley.
So, I mean, I'm assuming you're going to take him at 2, but I'm not going to actually type it in until you say so.
No, you can
My
type
argument against taking Saquon Barkley is we have not seen a running back at the volume that he has and be productive the next year in a long time.
I agree, and I hear that. And like you could argue both these players, which you can type Barkley in. George has to do all the typing. He got tired of me typing in Sporkle last week playing games, so he's like, I'm the typer now. But both these guys, incredible seasons. One's a Triple Crown, one's a 2,000-yard rusher. Like they're probably not going to hit their point output this upcoming season, but there's still that chance they can. I hear what you're saying about we have seen regression at the running back position, but like Saquon is still behind probably the best offensive line in football. If you want to make an argument for the Lions, I might listen to you, but I might tell you it's still this line. He led the league in yards before contact. Most of the time you hear like Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, they have as many yards after contact as, all these players have in total. Saquon, he had a lot of yards after contact too because he made guys miss, but he also, averaged over 2 yards per carry without getting touched. And I think when you're playing behind that offensive line, how could you not go Saquon Barkley? I don't hate your Jamar Chase. I just was expecting to take Jamar Chase at second, and I was kind of thrown off. So this has been a fun start already.
Good. See, and it's way too early, and I reserve the right to jump around and take Saquon Barkley first overall by the time we get to draft season because it is February 3rd.
Way too early.
It's February 3rd, but no, I don't think there's really a wrong choice as of now. But it's something to think about how we haven't seen a back be super productive with that kind of workload. Besides Derrick Henry, I guess Derrick Henry's kind of been the exception to that rule.
Yeah. I would agree for sure. But you have the 3rd pick. And
I do.
This is where, like, I think there is a slight tier break here for me. Obviously right to reserve and change later. But I would say, like, if you don't have a top pick, like, I would be shooting for the bottom of the round if where I'm hoping for.
That's something where, like, we'll definitely talk about this later, but I've noticed a lot more success on my teams picking picks 7, 8, 9, 10 than I have picking picks 1, 2, 3, 4 in the last few years. I think it's the turning back around 2. I mean, obviously we do a lot of 10 teamers as a 12 teamer, but the same rules apply. I think that talent on the top of round 2 has been a lot closer than it had been in the previous like 5 years.
And you also play with guys that can make their championship matchup drafting Christian McCaffrey 101 when the team lies about his Achilles.
That's totally fair too. Picking pick 3. There is a tier break here for me too. I'm going between 2 guys. I'm going to take the running back. I'm going to take Bijan.
Okay.
So I saw a lot of him just kind of carrying the team this year. And I think if they get more consistent quarterback play, he can really bring his game to the next level. He's not going to be quite that focal point. They saw some of the weapons around him start to grow, and the man's just a beast. So I think as he continues to grow into the offense, get more carries, and gets more consistent play around him, I think his ceiling just grows.
No, I agree. I do like that one. And I was trying to look up while you were talking about that his stats with the last couple of weeks with Michael Penix, because we assume Michael Penix would be the guy
Yep.
going forward. In those last 3 weeks of the season, uh, which I know for sure, I can't remember if it was the last 4 weeks, but we'll say the last 3 weeks in non PPR over 20 points. So each
Could
week.
be
So
a
I do,
glimpse of what you're looking at next year.
yeah, I really do like that one as well. Um, for me, that puts me at the pick 4 spot, which is definitely a tougher situation to figure out here of where I want to go. And I'm going back to the pass catcher at this point, and it's really which of 3 to 5 I want, and that's why I was talking about, where we're going to be at. And I
Mhm.
think this is a little bit risky. I mean, because we don't know his quarterback. We
Yep.
think we know his quarterback, and it might be a guy that's never played in the NFL before. But I think the talent is just too good to not take Justin Jefferson at this spot in February.
I agree with that. He was the other person I was kind of juggling at pick 3, but the uncertainty at quarterback is the reason he knocked him to 4. But even doesn't matter, seems who is at quarterback there. He just produces. He might have a lower ceiling, but the ceiling's still very high.
For sure. I think, like you said, he just produces,
Mhm.
and that's what you want if you're at this high end spot.
Yep. And then we got JJ to JJ next year, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't work out too much for Pickett to Pickens, but maybe JJ to JJ will work.
Maybe. We'll see. Going to pick 5. This is another tier break to me. I think that
I
Jefferson
would
and
just
Bijan are a tier break for me.
I would disagree, but I also just said I
Okay.
was debating between 5 guys at number 4. So,
All right. So yeah, I'm basically on what pass catcher do I like here. So there's one running back that's in play for me, but I'm going to go to a pass catcher instead. And as much as it pains me, I'm going to take CD Lamb.
yep.
So we just have seen him play with Dak super well. You got to expect Dak to be back for a full season. Even without him, he played solid, and he was playing with a hurt shoulder for half or 3/4 of the season and still finishes a top 5 wide receiver. So,
Yeah, I think Lamb was the right pick. Again, you're talking about the high upside potential.
mhm.
He has the superstar ability. So I do agree with that pick as pick 5 as well. He was one of the people I was talking about. That leaves me with my guy, and I'm down between 2. And
Mhm.
I thought I was going in one spot, but then I heard you say, which obviously this is a completely different team, that there was a running back that you were thinking of.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to take that running back just because, why not try to jump you? And I'm going to take one Mr. Jameer Gibbs as the number 6 overall player. And I understand all the concern. David Montgomery will be back. They signed him to an extension. He'll be healthy. What does that run game look like without Ben Johnson? I hear all the concerns with that. However, I think we've already seen what he can do in a limited role. We see what he can do in a moderate to full-time role, and David Montgomery is getting older. Jameer Gibbs is electric, and I just talked about it with Saquon Barkley. When you have an elite offensive line, the running backs matter, and for that, I'm going to take Jameer Gibbs because one thing I know for sure is losing Ben Johnson is not going to put more on the shoulders of Jared Goff. It's going to
No.
put more into that run game. So I'm going to take Jameer Gibbs here.
And yeah, I think he has the potential to even go above CD. I think the biggest thing is how they split their running backs is why I kind of pushed him down just a slight bit.
Yeah.
But you don't
If
know how that's going to break out with a new offensive coordinator. Is a good point.
yeah, but also like if to the same point, if David Montgomery was a free agent, not coming back, I think Jameer Gibbs might be up there at 2 or 3.
Yes. Yeah,
So
because I mean, I love Craig Reynolds. Shout out Craig Reynolds. You're not going to give him as many carries as you would David Montgomery.
exactly.
Pick 7. I am still back to the pass catchers here, and I think there's a bunch of guys where it's almost a toss up in my head. I'm going to go with the longer sustained success. I'm going to stick in Detroit, and I'm going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Okay,
So
that worked out so well. Because again, I know we're not talking like, we're drafting individually for teams, but in this little gamemanship, because I took Jahmyr Gibbs, I got the receiver I was debating between him with at pick 8. Does not do anything, but just allows me to say that.
yeah.
I like the Amon-Ra St. Brown thing. I think the same question marks. What does that offense look like with the new offensive coordinator exist? But he has shown time and time again he is the security blanket for one, Mr. Jared Goff, and maybe one day Jameson Williams become a bigger factor of that, which would be great for my dynasty team. But I do like the pick there. I will take one Mr. Puka Nacua that is Mr. Targets when it comes to Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford said he does plan to play next year. They might need to work on his contract, but if Stafford's there, Puka Nacua is his target, and I like him at pick 8.
So I wanted you to pick your pick because that was the other person I was between. And as much as I like Puka Nacua, I feel like there's a little bit more inconsistency with how he's played over his 2 seasons as compared to how Amon-Ra's kind of built into that Lions offense. So it is really a toss-up. They're probably going to finish with similar points. I was kind of taking consistency at pick 7 by taking Amon-Ra instead.
No, I hear that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a little bit more higher upside. What you can do when you get to this, pick 8, if you're because you have a pick turning around, especially in 10-man leagues like we've talked about. But now it is your turn with pick 9.
Pick 9. This is somebody who I did not give enough credit to this year. That definitely deserves to be a first-round pick. Nico Collins. When he was healthy this year, he was a game changer. And I mean, wide receiver 1 by a wide margin when he ended up leaving with his injury, and he wasn't quite the same, but they proved that they want the offense to run through him, and he is a big play threat. So the ceiling is off the charts at pick 9.
Yeah, he was the next guy on my list as well, so I have no complaints here. And then this is another tier break for me.
I agree.
Excuse me. So I was like, I would prefer Jefferson over Nico Collins, but I think there's enough upside with a guy like Nico Collins that you could talk me into taking him there. All those players I think can be interchangeable. Would I do it? No, obviously I didn't. That's kind of where I'm at with that one. But for this next spot, I think it gets really complicated for me. And for me, it's coming down to old reliable or young and high ceiling. And I feel like I've been out on this guy for, I didn't think he was going to have a great year. He finished in the top 5 of fantasy scoring. And I feel like I'm doing him a disservice by not taking him here. But I'm going to stay with the pass catcher, and I'm going to take one Mr. Brian Thomas Jr. with new Mr. Duval, Liam Cohen, and pair him up, see if he can get that Mike Evans role for, or the Chris Godwin, McMillan, just heavily evolved difference maker for this offense with Trevor Lawrence. He had a great year playing with Mac Jones and a banged up Trevor Lawrence and a terrible offense. So this is definitely a high upside pick. But I think it's worth the risk with having another pick and just a couple more.
I loved having Brian Thomas here. I was in my head this entire day, like, how early do we take Brian Thomas? And for whatever reason, he fell at the top of this tier for me too. Like, I couldn't justify taking him over guys like Amon-Ra, Puka, Nico Collins, but with the upside and how I think he benefits from hopefully getting a new voice in there, but being basically the only weapon in that offense right now. It's a big benefit to him.
Yeah, for sure. Now I'm interested to see what you do here.
So I'm trying to look turn now that we're at pick 11. And I think there's more left at the running back position right now than there is at the wide receiver position. So I'm going to stick pass catchers, and I'm going to also take upside despite not knowing his quarterback situation. I'm going to take Malik Neighbors. I feel like he didn't get a lot of credit for how good he was this season, and he actually broke some rookie records. And there was some inconsistency, but that comes with the fact that he played with 3 or 4 different quarterbacks, and his starting quarterback got cut in the middle of the season. So the upside's off the charts there too.
I did not see you taking Malik Neighbors. I think it's a great pick. I was planning to take him in the turn. I was going to pair him with a, probably solid running back and then take the high upside there. But I really do like the pick of Malik Neighbors and, potentially a guy like Shedeur Sanders throwing to him this season if he falls to 4. We'll have to wait and see. And I think that plays a big factor into it. If they skip out on a quarterback, because we're doing this in February and it's another year of Danny DeVito, Zach Wilson, like he put up some good numbers against the Indianapolis Colts, but he had some rough stretches as well. Maybe he falls into the second round.
They didn't have Zach Wilson, but that'd be fun, wouldn't it?
That was Denver. I'm sorry.
It was Drew Lock, which I mean, there's another former Denver quarterback, so I get your confusion. And at this point, does it really matter once you get that far down on like quarterbacks? They're all going to treat your fantasy assets at least the same. Maybe they'll play differently for the actual team, but your fantasy assets are going to get similar outputs when you get like a quarterback like that in there.
Yeah. So pick 12, team on the turn here, and it's a long way waiting to not take a wide receiver here. But I think we've like AJ Brown is sitting there. If I wanted to take a wide receiver, T. Higgins is there as well if you wanted to play that game, but is he going to be back in Cincinnati?
He's someone that could adjust a ton between now and April on fantasy rankings.
But I think I have to play the game here and take 2 running backs that finished top 5 in half-point fantasy scoring. So give me one Mr. Derrick Henry and one Mr. Josh Jacobs. I don't care which order you take him in because I'm getting both. And I'm just going to try to rely on my running backs, the stables, the guys. And these are still workhorse guys. Yes, I know Lamar steals some rushing in the red zone, but these are 2 workhorse guys. And I think I can have better luck taking some flyers on wide receivers later in the draft.
That's always the tricky thing when you're looking at this. Like,
ask me
the running back, like those top tier running backs actually carried a few of my teams this year to solid seasons, championship runs. But traditionally, it's the wide receivers that have done that. But you're going to find more wide receivers late in the draft. Can you find this year's Brian Thomas, for example? So I think when you have this situation when a lot of these wide receivers went off the board in round 1, that's a good turn.
I agree.
Team 11. So I'm not worried about you taking 2 running backs because I took Neighbors thinking that I have 3 running backs here that I like. So it was Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and Devon Achane. So Devon Achan is going to go to team 11.
I do like that pick. I had Devon Achane everywhere, and he was electric. I mean, I think he was on every team, if I remember correctly, in the Couch Games World Cup that had in the championship game in all 3 leagues. He was there. However, I did see this stat, and I wanted to share it with you, and I was hoping that you would take him, so I didn't have to,
Oh, you're going to rip him apart and rip my pick, but you didn't want to rip your own pick.
So he played 11 games this season with Tua Tagovailoa. And those 11 games, he averaged 19.5 fantasy points. Receptions, 6 receiving touchdowns, 48.
Extremely good.
And that's just like the rushing was one thing, but receptions, I think, was a big thing. Those other 6 games when he didn't have Tua, he had 0 receiving touchdowns, only averaged 10 receiving yards per games, and only averaged 7.7 fantasy points. So we're back to the Tua question mark, which we had with the guy that we took in the top 3 that hasn't even been drafted yet. And it's just like, how much faith can you put in a guy like Tua? And, you'd think a running back would be a guy that could survive the quarterback, but you could argue Devon Achane had the biggest impact of everybody on this team. So while I do like the player, I do like the pick. I hope Tua stays healthy all season long. I do think there are some red flags with a guy like Devon Achane, but I'll probably draft him in every league too because his explosiveness, like the fact that he didn't slide in, the first round of the playoffs and helped a lot of people get in was, immaculate. So shout out Devon Achane for that.
He moves up to the top of round 2 just for that. But no, that's a really good point. And I mean, I think the only reason he had a bigger, shift without Tua is just because Tyreek Hill, even with Tua, just wasn't the same this year. Some of it might have had to do with the wrist injury that was unreported but happened in training camp. But even yet, I don't think you can draft to injuries. That's something that we preach every single season. So I think that also applies to injuries to your quarterback. But he's still somebody who, when you're taking him at the top of round 2, as compared to taking someone second overall, you're hoping that you can fill that void better than you can if you was like, say, example, where team 2 took Saquon if Saquon was then out for the season.
Yeah, I got you. All right, my turn.
Yes,
Team 10.
team 10.
It's doing the opposite of Team 12. Team 12 doubled up on running backs. Team 10 is doubling up on wide receivers. And give me Mr. A.J. Brown. Probably a travesty that he fell this far, but I understand it, with the question marks. And honestly, like if we did this next week and he goes off for, 3 tutties and Super Bowl MVP, like he's probably sitting up there with Amon-Ra St. Brown. So like that's the fun part about doing this in February. But yeah, give me I got the high upside in Brian Thomas, and I got kind of, still upside, but a little bit more reliable. And I'll see what I can get in running back. So I'm really fascinated to see how teams 10 and teams 12 break through our 4 rounds.
Definitely. And yeah, it's probably the travesty he went this far. I think he's probably going to pass some of those younger guys on a lot of people's boards when we get around to the season or after this week if someone does this activity later, like you said. But the fact that they are so heavy on the run in Philly, and I don't see that changing despite an offensive coordinator change again, it just lowers his ceiling a little bit.
No, I understand. Especially the new offensive coordinator thing is definitely a big factor to it.
Exactly. It's not going to really affect Saquon as long as he stays on the field, but A.J. Brown's somebody who it could affect. That's another tier break then for me. And this
Agreed.
is where I think things kind of blow wide open because we're starting to get to guys who are, you don't really know.
I would agree. I think there's some nice names,
Yeah.
but there's some also
There's some
like
nice
question marks.
names. There's some interesting names. I'm going to go bold. Okay, fine. I'm going to take team 9 similar to team 10. They're not going to take a running back in the first 2 rounds, but they're not going to take another wide receiver here either. I'm going to be the guy that jumps ahead and takes Brock Bowers.
I'm sorry, what? Wow.
I'm thinking Brock Bowers is going to start moving into Travis Kelce territory. He's not quite on the turn, but I think he's going to be taken in the second round this year.
Oh, boy. I wasn't even thinking Brock Bowers. Wow.
Now, I mean, you look at it too, like even if he's not putting up the points that Kelce did in his prime, you also have to look at the fact that he still had the gap because the tight end position in general was worse than it has been, and he was still producing. So it's just trying to get the jump on people by getting more points at the position that no one's getting points at.
I hear you. I do. And I hear you, but he scored 8 points more. Or I'm sorry, 12 points. I can't do math. Points more than Trey McBride and 8 points more. That time I'm actually right than George Kittle and half point PPR. So it just seems like a shock. But I understand if you think he's going to be all that, Pete Carroll's going to come in there with Chip Kelly and throw all the way to Brock Bowers, which we didn't talk about Chip Kelly returning to the NFL. Which
yeah, you're right. That's a fun one.
But no, I like it. I love that you're bold, and I love that you did this on February. So when we get around a draft season and you're like, why would you take Brock Bowers? Which I don't think you're going to. I don't think you're going to change that much. Like I was
maybe
expecting
not
you to go
near the top of round 2, but like, yeah.
Okay. So I'm back on the clock here.
Yeah.
Now with Puka Nacua as my guy, and I'm debating if I want to go where I want to go here.
There's some interesting running back names out there.
Yeah, so I was looking at running backs. Obviously, I'm not going Kyron Williams. I'm not doubling up on the Rams like
Yep.
that. So you can take him off my list. Jonathan Taylor is one of the guys I'm debating between, for sure. And there's one other guy which I feel like I might just be overthinking, and that is one Mr. Tyreek Hill. And like we took him in the top 3. I know he had a really down year. There was all the talks about him, leaving the team and not being there. So I think that's putting some big question marks on why he's not been drafted yet. So like part of me wants to go him. Uh, but I think I'm going to stick with the running back for now. And team 8 is either going to love their team or going to hate it when I take Josh Taylor, Jonathan Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor.
They're either going to be the highest scoring team or the team that feels like they're eliminated after week 4.
That's 100% true. And I mean, I think we might even have a little bit of a different view on Jonathan Taylor's season if he didn't have that fumble at the goal line in the first round of the fantasy playoffs. That probably knocked a lot of people out. I was one of the few people that survived it and got his next week payoff, but he was still solid. He was still a top 15 running back. You have to think that hopefully they can get that offense more stable without quarterback changes and bring him back to closer to where he was, but he's not quite the same back he was his first 2 seasons. So there's some question marks.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, so we're on to team 7. So this is where I took the safer wide receiver per se and taking Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I'm going to take the riskier running back. And I don't know if this is somebody that you had in your consideration or not. I'm going to go Bucky Irving.
Yeah, I 100% did. Same thing though with the concerns about Jahmyr Gibbs just at a lower level. Like they're now on another offensive coordinator. How does that affect this team? But I liked Bucky Irving. He was in that next tier, and I thought about him in that same list.
Definitely. I think it's just he earned the job. He looked explosive. I don't think Rachaad White's a problem. He's going to mix in. He's going to get some passing work. But if the offense can keep at least similar to how they were these last 2 years with Baker Mayfield ascending, Bucky Irving's going to get points.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. My next pick, though, Tyreek Hill. I talked about it the last one. I was debating between him. Give me Jahmyr Gibbs and Tyreek Hill, and I'm just waiting for a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, that team could score 50 points one week and then 175 the next week. That's just how it's starting to break out. And maybe that works. And maybe it's more consistent if Tyreek Hill stays healthy and Tua stays healthy. But yeah, no, it's not a bad pick at this point. The upside's off the charts.
If you said Tyreek Hill finishes wide receiver 1 next year, like it's not disbelievable. So getting him,
Yeah,
pick 18, great value.
exactly. So then team 5 has CD Lamb in the first round. Second round, I'm going to take a running back. I'm just going to go Kyren Williams. The only thing we haven't seen from Kyren Williams so far is putting together an entire season. He's had really good stretches. He's been solid for a whole season, but it almost seems like he starts off the season, he's kind of hovering around that running back 5 kind of territory. And then by the end of the season, you're like, oh, he was running back 15. He's not been able to play an entire season at that high level. We hope he has to get there.
I like it. All right, you had a bold pick. I don't know how bold this is in the second round, and we're in February. But this team is going to be fun. Give me Lamar Jackson. Pair him with Justin Jefferson.
Ooh. First quarterback off the board. It's maybe a little earlier than we used to, but if he has a season even close to how he had this year, you're already paying off.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, like because we're only doing 4 rounds, I might be a little bit quarterback heavy just to get some guys up there than I would traditionally because of where we're at, and we're not going 6 rounds where I think we would be at the end of that tier. But maybe we'll have some honorable mentions after round 4. We'll see.
I like it. I'm starting to think quarterback 2. He wouldn't have been my quarterback 1.
You would take Josh Allen?
I would take Josh Allen, but it's kind of a toss-up between the two. They both have the running ability. It's just, is Josh Allen still going to be 95% of that offense next year, or is he going to be more like 75? We have to see what they put around him next season and how much they decide to run quarterback sneaks, because they kind of failed at it in the postseason. So maybe they're going to try to find another way to do it. I'm not taking him there though. I'm between two pass catchers, and I'm gonna go with Scary Terry.
Okay. I like
So, are
that
you
one.
surprised by that one or no? I couldn't tell
No.
by your reaction.
I was had 3 there, and Scary Terry was probably my 3rd option, but
Okay.
they were all so close for me. And that's probably because I feel like every year there's one player that I just get on the bandwagon,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what, what happens. And I feel like that the guy that I'm starting to pound the table for uh did finish as wide receiver 5 on the season, which I don't think many people realize. We talked about it. I mean, he did have a 40-point week 18, which played a big factor in that when most people don't play. So that plays into it. But that'll be Mr. Drake London with a full season with Michael Penix. Pair him up with Mr. Saquon Barkley. I like that pick.
I like that pick too. He was the other one I was considering between. Maybe I'm overcorrecting in February for Terry McLaurin, because if you remember, I'm the person that always stays away from Terry McLaurin.
Gotcha. So you'll regress to the mean. I
I'll
understand.
regress to the mean and probably end up taking Drake London before him. But for now, I'm just trying to be bullish on Terry McLaurin to talk myself into wanting to draft him next year, because he at least deserves it. But Drake London with a full season of Michael Penix definitely is intriguing.
Yeah, you're up for 2.
I'm up for 2, and I'm going to push that quarterback to the 3rd round. So my next pick here, see, I'm thinking, do I go old reliable in this situation, or do I take a risk on not knowing something or a younger guy? I'm kind of in the fence. I'm my first pick, Jamar Chase. I'll go risky on the wide receiver pick, and I'm going to take T. Higgins, and we'll just kind of hope he goes to a place where this is justified.
I did not see that coming.
I'm thinking he's going to go to a place where he's a wide receiver 1, give him a little bit more upside than he has had.
So I see him back in Cincinnati for sure.
And if that's the case, he probably falls to the end of round 3 for me. But I'm being bullish, I guess, in February. That's how this is working on Terry McLaurin and T. Higgins.
Oh, man. Okay.
And then I said it round 3, top of it to be Josh Allen. Kind of a coin flip.
I don't know how, just for like the Instagram post after, you didn't, go Ashton Genty here, hoping he gets drafted by the Bengals and Joe Burrow.
Ooh.
That would have been just a fun.
Maybe I'm thinking T. Higgins goes to Buffalo and I got a stack.
Oh, okay. I like it. So now you're going big.
I'll make my own storylines if you want me to.
Change the headline. T. Higgins traded to Buffalo. Fantasy football outcome. But
Cody's already playing the clickbait before we even get off the air. I love it.
All right. So our viewers just cut in half after I said that too. So that's a fun stat for people back home. All right. So that's not where my mind was going at all. So I have to, do a little bit of pivoting on this one.
So that's also part of a draft strategy, is getting in the mind of your opponent. Now, I mean, we're picking way more often than we normally would in a draft, but I'm really making Cody real. I like it.
But what I'm saying is, when you took Terry McLaurin, I told you there was 3 guys. And then you said you were going to take a wide receiver, and I was like, well, I'm not going to get my guy.
Yep.
But give me Ladd McConkey. Pair him up with Drake London and Saquon Barkley. And it's really hard if you're just looking at this and seeing 2 Bengals players and Josh Allen. Like, it's like, how does that team stack up? But again, George is assuming that T. Higgins gets moved. If he got moved to New England, though, are you still taking him at round 2?
Now you see, like, I would feel more comfortable if they had a quarterback in place, but they act like, if he goes to a place with a quarterback in place, but you can kind of say they do. That's the one thing they do have. So yeah, I don't know if I'd take him that high. Maybe he drops a few more picks, but I would definitely like the idea of upside the wide receiver 1 T. Higgins.
All right, I like it.
I mean, you'll just probably cut this soundbite and really get me later.
What? That you're a Chargers fan? Matt, I took Lad McConkey.
No, that I'm super bullish on T. Higgins, but it is February, so.
Hey, do what you got to do, bro. Your pick.
All right. I think we're on to old reliable. I'm not going to wait any longer. I'm going to go Mike Evans. The man just gets 1,000 yards.
That he does. That is a good pick here as well.
I'm stopping the Cody surprise picks by taking somebody who is at least reliable and expects to be around here.
No, and this is where I think it gets even more interesting for me on who I'm going to take here. Because so I'm going to take a guy that I don't know where he's going to be. I assume he's going to be back with his team, but I'm going to take one Mr. James Cook here and hope that he's back with Buffalo. And I just got, I believe, running back 6 or 7 from last year in the 3rd round.
And I was thinking we're going to go running back, considering this team hasn't taken a running back yet. So out of what's left, I think he's my favorite option. So I like it. But yeah, you don't really know 100% if he's going to be in Buffalo.
Yeah, there was one other running back I was debating. But I like James Cook the best.
And I'm not taking him here because I'm going to be the guy that takes tight ends today. So I'm going to go Trey McBride for Team 5.
No, I like that.
So this is more the value where you want to take probably McBride and Bowers in your head?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think I like McBride. You're taking tight ends. The Bowers one, seems like a stretch when you have guys like Taylor and Hill above him. That kind of stuff. Like Taylor scored 40 more points than he did on the season. We talked Tyreek Hill's down year. I'm trying to pull that up quick on how many points he scored more than a guy like. But you're going for the, positional value that you don't get with as many players. So I do like what you're doing there. And he did outscore Tyreek Hill. So at least you did that. So maybe I'm just not on board. Maybe it's still hard to believe. But with me, Jahmyr Gibbs, Tyreek Hill, I'm going to take the guy that's probably going to rise the highest after the draft.
Okay.
And I'm taking a rookie. I have no idea what team he's even on. But give me Ashton Genty here. Hopefully it's like the Bengals maybe, or even Dallas wouldn't be too bad. I know they're the teams that are favorite. Hopefully it's not like the Najee Harris replacement. I wouldn't take him there then. But give me Ashton Genty, the fun player for some team.
I like it.
And you can't even break it down because
you can't break it down because you don't know where he's at. But you know for a fact if he goes to a good situation like a Dallas, he's going to be so overdrafted.
Right. He's
probably not making it to round 3 if he goes to a place like Dallas.
He probably might not even make it out of round 1.
It's true.
Round 2.
And I mean, it's sometimes that's worked out. I mean, we've even seen it with Najee Harris. Like his rookie season was his best year, and it worked out for him. But there's plenty of times where it hasn't worked out too.
I think a fascinating spot for him, and again, I don't want to talk about this too much because I don't want this to happen, but a team like Minnesota, Aaron Jones only there for a 1 year. They had to bring Cam Akers back, get him with basically a rookie quarterback with the wide receiver weapons they have outside. I think Genty in Minnesota would be a great fit. Again, I don't want to talk that into existence.
I think it would be a great fit, but yeah, I get what you're saying there. All right, there's one more person I have in this tier, and it's a wide receiver, and I don't know if this is bold or not too, but it's Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's somebody who really showed out this season.
No, I think it's a great pick. I was debating him as well, especially with the potential DK Metcalf trade. I know it hasn't been talked about much, but his contract is very tradable. He's going into his last year of his deal kind of thing. How much do they value him? He's attainable, I guess, would be the way to look at it. So with JSN taking off last year and potentially although he plays predominantly in the slot, he was the number one guy. So I do really like that pick.
All right, Cody. Team 8, Puka and Jonathan Taylor. Who's joining them?
Puka and Jonathan Taylor. So I need someone that's going to not like their. Okay. Oh, man, this is tough. There is you mentioned the tier break, and there is a couple guys here that I am debating between. There's even a tight end that I'm thinking about. There's a couple guys on a team that didn't play great this past season, but they're former rookie of the year kind of caliber players. Some people coming off of injury. There's a lot of question marks here.
This is the fun part of the draft that everyone's going to be sweating out in September. That's what I'm feeling.
But I also think like once we get more clarity, this will be a better situation too. Because there's like one guy that where he's at now, I probably wouldn't take him, but screw it. I'm going to take him because I don't think he's going to be there. And I am talking about one Mr. Green Bay Packer wide receiver, Davante Adams.
I like it. I mean, we're thinking he's moving. Or if he does stay, there's a good chance Rodgers stays. I think they started to get back on the same page as the season went on. But he's one of those guys that raises the play of his quarterback. He's going to get his. Thank you for fixing the name. I never can remember how all the Devontaes spell their name. They're all slightly different.
Yep. I had to fix that one for my guy. But after
Appreciate it.
That's the
I've
only
been
spelling.
trying to double check every single time, and that's the one I didn't.
All right. You're back up.
I'm back up. Nico Collins, Brock Bowers. I'm probably going to go kind of bold here too, because I need a running back. I want him to be a running back one, and I don't like the running back on a similar team to what you just said. So I'm going to go for the home run hit of a guy I hope stays healthy and pick Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, that was the guy I was debating with Davante Adams, with the team that's either going to love their team or they're going to hate their team. Because if you had Puka, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, like that team is just like waiting to get hurt. But when they're healthy, they're electric. So I like
Nico Collins, Brock Bowers, Christian McCaffrey has a chance to either win a league or look horrible.
I mean, you can say that about every team too, outside of, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Josh Allen. If they're both in the Bengals, hey, Joe Burrow's electric though, so maybe he could pull that off. All right.
Yeah.
But I do like your Christian McCaffrey pick there. I was interested to see if he would how far he would go in this simulation. And that was smart to take him because I need a running back.
Yep.
And I'm not going to take one.
Okay.
I'm going to take
Team
kind
10
of a running back.
is the epitome of Cody in fantasy drafts. He doesn't draft running backs.
I'm also team 12. So, but because there's not a running back that I love here, I mean, literally, like the next running back on the board for me is like Chase Brown. Joe Mixon is a guy I probably should take here. I might sit here and talk myself into Joe Mixon. There's the high upside of Breece Hall. Like, could he have a bounce back year? All right, I talked myself into Joe Mixon. I'm gonna take Joe Mixon.
Boo! I like chaos.
All right, fine. Take it back. I'll go with my original pick. It's February. I'll do what I want. There'll be a takesy backsies. I'm gonna take kind of a running back. He at least scores a lot of 1-yard touchdowns. Give me the stack with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts.
That stack got me to a miracle playoff run in our league of record this year. It didn't quite get me over the edge, but man, it got me close.
And Saquon Barkley still doesn't know how to score from it's either 60 yards or trip at the 1-yard line.
Exactly. It's pretty much infuriating. But for Jalen Hurts fantasy owners, they're like, oh, this works out because Saquon got 2,000 yards anyway. So he's still got his fantasy points.
And I'm taking Joe Mixon if the tush push gets banned.
Yeah, actually, yeah. That we'll see how that works in the winter meetings too, because I don't think that we didn't talk about it much on the show. That sequence in against Washington, it could be the reason the tush push gets banned.
So if it finally gets banned, I am passing on Jalen Hurts, but I will take him now for this mock draft.
Okay, so this is the part of the draft where I kind of want to throw up a little bit, but at the same time, I don't. You mentioned a running back that I was thinking about going with here, but I'm going to stick with a pass catcher and hope I get somebody to come around to me on the turn at Team 11. So I'm going to take a high upside wide receiver, and I'm going to take Rashee Rice.
Oh, darn it. You took the guy I was going to take here, which was smart because you were thinking running back, and you saw that I had already taken 2 running backs with Team 12, and I was going to take Rashee Rice coming off the injury. So I think that was a very smart pick. I do like that one.
Knowing what you're battling against, seeing Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, knowing that he's more than likely not taking 2 running backs. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, because we're only doing 4 rounds and the 4th round would kind of be a lightning round at this point, but I would consider a guy like George Kittle here if my team ended at 4, but I would not take him this high. So I'm going to pay respect to the draft here. And I will, however, be taking 2 wide receivers still. I have my solid running backs. So I'm going to go for a little bit more higher upside here. One is Cortland Sutton. He developed a relationship with Bo Nix. That looked really good. I will take him.
Okay.
And then my next running back or my next wide receiver is between 2 players. One might get traded or might not. We don't know. But I think I'm going to go here then with Jordan Addison. Go really extreme high upside on that.
Jordan Addison looked invisible for like half the season, and then he just took over and actually was doing better than Justin Jefferson at points. So
Yeah,
that wasn't quite
upside.
the high upside wide receiver I thought you were going to go with, but I like the pick.
Was it Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because that was the other guy I was debating.
No, it wasn't him either, but maybe it's just me.
Well,
we're going to save it. So we're going round 4. We'll go a little bit faster. I wanted a running back, knew he wasn't going to take one. I'm going to take Chase Brown for Team 11.
All right. Since we're going quick, Team 10, Joe Mixon. I was going to take him in round 3. I figured I could get Jalen Hurts in round 4, but just for the fun of the draft, I did that. But I ended up with the same 4 players.
Joe Mixon should have been the pick, but I think Chase Brown has higher upside. So as an RB2, I'm taking it that way. And RB1, again, like that last RB1, Joe Mixon's a great pick.
Yeah, and Ashton Genty, if he's in the Bengals, Chase Brown's not here. I think that's
that's 100% true. Yeah. So I'm assuming he goes to a place like Dallas and Chase Brown's safe.
Yeah. For sure. You're up.
Okay. Yeah. I'll go as fast as I possibly can here. Couple of different options. I'm going to go with yeah. That's a good time. I'll take Marvin Harrison to go with this group here.
Okay. Not a bad option for that one. I'm going to continue this theme of how do I feel about my team and pair Puka Nacua, Jonathan Taylor, Devontae Adams. And this is, again, assuming Devontae Adams gets cut. I'm not taking 2 Jets players here, but give me Breece Hall.
Breece Hall. I like that one. 2 receivers, 1 running back for Team 7. Breece Hall probably would have been my pick here, but I don't know how much I really love my next tier of running backs. They're kind of just inconsistent.
There's one that
question marks.
There's one that I think I would take.
And it's Chuba Hubbard.
Yep.
And that's what I was going with. Because I don't think he's going to have any problems with the rookie because he tore his ACL so late in the season.
Yeah. All right. So because we're near the end here, this might be a little bit of a stretch. But new offensive coordinator, I think he could play a role of a guy that was drafted with number 7 overall. Give me DJ Moore with Ben Johnson in Cleveland to pair with Tyreek Hill and Ashton Genty.
He was a wide receiver I was thinking about, so I like that pick there. I guess I'm just going to be the guy to pick the tight ends. Never mind. I already have a tight end on this one. So I just gave up who I'm thinking about. You're welcome.
Well, there's 2. So I
That's
don't know which
fair.
one.
That is very fair. So CD, Kyron, Trey McBride, 3 quarterbacks already off the board. I'm going to go with another running back, I think similar to Kyron. I'm going to go Ken Walker.
No, I
And
like
hope
that.
one of those two ends up being that solid number 1 running back that you really want on a team.
I was going to take Ken Walker with my next pick to pair him with James Cook. So thank you. I did not think you were going to take him. So I am going to, I should take another running back, but I don't love the options here. But I also took a quarterback. So I'm going to go back to the wide receiver pool. And that is between 2 players for me. I talked about the one potentially getting traded. The other one, there's rumors might request the trade. But I will go. I don't love it if it's another stopgap quarterback. So give me Garrett Wilson. Whatever. Give me Garrett Wilson.
I don't know, for whatever reason, I thought you were a bigger Garrett Wilson person. He's who I thought you were considering earlier.
Oh, Jordan.
Back when you were talking about like the Cortland Sutton, Jordan Addison deal.
Yeah, I think it's really just the quarterback situation because they're not going to be in a prime situation to get a top guy. I don't think there's a ton of top talent in this draft anyways. I mean, it'd be fascinating if Rodgers does return and they do like a stopgap year with him, or like, but also like if this team is like, hey, we're going to give, Sam Darnold a try because Minnesota moves on, or something like that. Like we'll give up our 2nd round pick for Sam Darnold. Like Garrett Wilson could be a fascinating name. Would they bring Sam Darnold back
Do you
to
think
New
Sam
York?
Darnold would go back? That's the question.
It depends.
How about seeing ghosts? He's going to see ghosts again if he goes back to New York.
For sure. But I
But
think
I
there's
like
a couple
the idea of like that idea, just not that quarterback.
Yeah. But something like, is there a guy that could fill in, a la an Aaron Rodgers stopgap situation?
Yeah, I got you. All right, round 4. I'll go with that tight end I was thinking about, George Kittle.
All right, Saquon Barkley, Drake London, Ladd McConkey here. And there is a lot of interesting names to consider. If I wanted to go with the running backs, I could, talk through some of those, but I'll talk about them and I'm just going to go with the other guy that I was talking about and go with DK Metcalf.
There's a lot of wide receivers here that I feel like are in a very similar tier, and you could have gone with any of them. He was in that group.
Yeah.
So I'll just talk through a couple of guys that, like, we already have Josh Allen on this team, but I feel like this is probably going to be around the place where Jaden Daniels goes next year. So somebody to keep an eye on.
100% was going to take Terry McLaurin, but you took him 1 pick before me, and then team 4. I was hoping to do Terry McLaurin and then pair him in round 4 with Jaden Daniels. That was
maybe Cody. So Cody with team 3 would not have taken the tight end there. He would have taken Jaden Daniels to make the Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels stack.
Correct. I would have,
which makes sense.
Because
there's some running backs here that I really want to just like touch on, just give shout out. So Alvin Kamara, we don't know what that New Orleans team is going to look like, but like he's been reliable for the most part. James Conner is somebody who really doesn't get respect, just got a contract extension, and he's just been good. So he's somebody I'm really considering here. And then some wide receivers, you got Zay Flowers is near the top of my board. George Pickens is interesting. You're starting to get to some of the wide receiver 2s like the Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. I think I talked myself into going James Conner, considering there's not a running back on this team yet.
Hey, it's a smart pick. James Conner, I like that. I thought him or like a guy like Tony Pollard might be like a sneaky pick late in the rounds if you need a mid-tier running back. Like when he was healthy, he was playing pretty good at the running back position. And I'm glad you brought up Zay Flowers as well. That was another guy I was debating between, and I ended up taking Garrett Wilson. Hindsight, I wish I would have taken Zay Flowers. I just think the recency bias of missing 3 games with a knee injury, or I guess 2 games and 2.5 games, But taking him in the round 4 to pair with Lamar Jackson, I think would have been a better move than Garrett Wilson. Doing a quick relook at the draft order here.
I mean, we did kind of speed through round 4 a little bit. We normally have time. It's also February, so I think you get a little bit of a pass for having a little bit of regret on a round 4 pick in a February draft. But
yeah, and maybe I could have got him in
like,
round 5 if we would have did that. But
it's very true. I mean, but no, I think he's one of those people that like I talked about the infuriating wide receiver position this year, and he was the one guy that still stayed fairly consistent through the end of the season, as opposed to some of those other guys that were up there for seemingly no reason. Like Jaden Reed for the Packers. He was like wide receiver 7, 8 most of the season, it felt like, and then dropped off. And it was like, I feel like he hasn't done anything in 7 weeks.
I don't know why I'm getting caught with strays right now. Why are you talking bad about my team? But
I'm not talking about your team. I'm talking about Jaden Reed and having way too much stock of him this year.
I understand. And that is the fun part. I mean, that's why we're doing this exercise now, to kind of get a landscape of where players might be. And we already talked about, we took a rookie that hasn't even been drafted in the league yet. Like, we took players that might not be on their team. But it's never too early to start drafting and start thinking about that. And some of those rookies you're already thinking about because you're going to do your dynasty leagues, or maybe you'll do dynasty startups once the draft happens and want to do stuff like that. So anything else about this 4-round, way too early mock draft?
No, I think I got to talk about a lot of the guys I wanted to. This is always one of my favorite shows when we do it, because it's fun to look so far ahead when you shouldn't have to, but also just kind of talk fantasy after you have a couple weeks off from it and bring up a little bit more anticipation for how many months from now.
No, I completely agree with that sentiment, that it is great to talk fantasy football. And honestly, I'd argue that this episode was more exciting. Say whatever you want about it. But as always, thanks for checking out the Couch Jams podcast. We are here Mondays and Thursdays, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, live in your podcast feeds the next day. Make sure you are following us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok, and all those great places. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Kurth. And we'll be back to you on Thursday to break down the big game.